The Italian Air Force's long-awaited Centenary Airshow at Pratica di Mare aimed to tell the entire history of the Aeronautica Militare with an unprecedented selection of the Air Arm's current and former aircraft.
Hello, welcome to Pratica di Mare, the site for the Centenary Airshow of the Italian Air Force. This event has long promised to be one of the go-to airshows, not just of 2023, but probably of the entire decade. Behind me you can probably hear at the moment the F-104 Starfighter, which has been brought over from the United States just for this airshow. It's having a few technical problems, unfortunately. They're trying to get it fixed, and by the time I record the voiceover, we shall know whether it made it into the flying display today. So I'll hand over now to future me for a quick look at the lineup and running order.
Well, spoiler alert, the F-104 did fly, but we'll start with the early days of the Italian Air Force, then the early post-war aircraft before moving into the classic jets, 3 of which fly alongside their modern counterparts. Towards the end of the programme, we've got the incredible Air Parade featuring 87 aircraft of 24 distinct types, then the 3 Reparto Sperimentale Volo solo routines, before finally concluding with a Frecce Tricolori. So quite a lineup, as you can see, a fantastically ambitious concept, and an airshow the likes of which we'll probably never see again. But we start off with the very early history of the Italian Air Force with a replica Caproni CA.3 and a Spad 7R from the Jonathan collection. The CA.3 was a First World War heavy bomber used by the Air Corps of the Italian Army, which was the predecessor of the Italian Air Force. The Air Force itself was not established until 1923, but the CA.3 and its derivatives remained in service beyond that point, serving in the training role into the 1930s. Construction began on this particular aircraft in 2009. It's made its first flight in 2014, becoming the world's only airworthy CA.3 and the largest amateur-built aircraft in Italian history. It was then grounded due to engine problems shortly afterwards, but returned to flight on the 10th of June this year, having been restored specifically to take part in the airshow at Pratica di Mare. The Spad 7 that we see is a French-designed fighter, first flying in 1916. Again, this aircraft type was used by the Italian Army before the foundation of the Air Force, but it remained in Italian service until 1930. The Italian Air Force's Second World War history was not celebrated at the show, perhaps because the country swapped sides halfway through, partitioning the Air Force into 2 competing organisations. Or perhaps it's simply because very few of the aircraft types used during that period have been preserved. But we pick up the story post-war when the reformed Italian Air Force began taking delivery of a new fleet of aircraft from the Allied powers. The Ally-aligned Italian co-belligerent Air Force flew Spitfires as far back as 1943, but the Italian Air Force officially took delivery of the type in 1946. They flew 35 Mark 5s like this one and 110 Mark 9s. Also entering formal Italian Air Force service in 1946 was the P-38 Lightning, of which Italy received about 100. They flew a mix of P-38Ls like this one, a small number of twin-cockpit P-38DL trainers, and photo reconnaissance F5E, G and H models, and operated the type until 1956. It's a very quiet aircraft by the standards of its contemporaries, primarily because of its turbochargers which muffle the engine exhaust. With many of the modern fast jets sitting on the flight line with their engines running as they prepared for their displays, you'll notice throughout this video there are a few moments where it's actually quite difficult to hear the aircraft that are in the air. Unfortunately, that's just the way things were given the showground layout. A real highlight now, the Horsemen aerobatic team from the United States. The Horsemen is widely recognised as the world's premier warbird formation aerobatic team. They can adapt to fly a variety of aircraft types, but they primarily fly the P-51 Mustang. Pilots come from the USA, Dan Friedkin, Ed Shipley and Jim Beasley, but today they're flying a trio of very rarely seen Mustangs based across Europe. In the lead, the extremely elusive P-51D Mustang Berlin Express, owned by Comanche fighters and currently based at Duxford. It's joined by its Comanche Fighters Duxford stablemate, P-51D the Hun Hunter Texas on the right wing. And on the left wing, P-51D Miss Stress from Flying Legends in Germany, an aircraft that was only imported to Europe from the United States in 2018. Italy received 143 P-51D Mustangs between 1947 and 1951, and they were phased out in the late 50s. During their short service career, they were widely regarded as one of Italy's most capable and most glamorous fighter aircraft. Arriving in Italian service in 1949 was this locally produced training aircraft, the Fiat G46. One 141 of them were operated by the Aeronautica Militare, along with a further 70 which were exported to Austria, Argentina and Syria. They were used primarily in the intermediate training role, roughly equivalent to the Chipmunk in British service. This trio comprises twin-seat G46B models, although there was also a single-seat version, the G46 4A. A second contribution from Fighter Aircraft Engineering, and this time it's their P-47D Thunderbolt Nelly B. We perhaps think of it as one of the outstanding fighters and attack aircraft of the Second World War, but Italy didn't receive their first P-47s until 1950. They operated 77 of them, all D models like the one we see now. Due to technical problems, it wasn't used as a fighter in Italian service, but instead flew as a reconnaissance platform. Perhaps as a result, it was only operated very briefly by the Italian Air Force, being retired after only around 3 years of service. So many of these aircraft at Pratica di Mare are the only flying examples of their kind in Europe. The P-47, the P-38 we saw earlier, the P-51B. It's quite extraordinary, really. Not only the variety of aircraft that this airshow managed to bring together, but also the exceptional rarity of almost all of these types. Our second and final contribution from the Flying Bulls now. Here is their Douglas DC-6B, cunningly disguised as an energy drink. Italy used a fleet of 6 DC-6Bs in the VIP transport role from 1952 until 1981, along with the Convair CV-440. They were the first 2 aircraft types in the Italian Air Force to be purchased specifically for that role. Again, this is the only airworthy example of its kind in Europe, representing a type that first flew in 1946 and of which more than 700 were produced. Several remain in active service today, used for cargo missions in Alaska. It was with the de Havilland Vampire that the Italian Air Force entered the jet age, but the earliest jet in the flying programme at Pratica di Mare was the T-33. The Aeronautica Militare took delivery of 60 T-33A trainers and 14 RT-33A reconnaissance platforms in 1952 and operated the type until 1982.
Di proiettarli nelle macchine di ultima generazione come l'Eurofighter F-105. a costi decisamente ridotti.
Li stiamo vedendo proprio in questo momento. Intanto il T-33 è ancora in volo sopra le nostre teste. Siamo arrivati.
This specific aircraft is a CT-133 Mark III, the Canadian license-built version of the T-33A.
Sembra già molto moderno.
Next up, Europe's only airworthy Sabre, owned and flown by Frederick Ackery. Italy's first Sabres, 93 F-86Ks, arrived in 1955, followed by 179 Canadian license-built CL-13 Sabre Mark IVs, which began arriving the following year. Of these, the CL-13 was pretty close to the original Sabre. The F-86K, however, was a vastly improved aircraft which traded manoeuvrability for a considerable amount of extra power, an afterburning engine, and additional armaments. In fact, the two types shared only about 25% parts commonality. The arrival of these American and British designed jets in Italian service prompted a certain amount of controversy, and soon the Italian aerospace industry swung into action. This was one of their first mass production jets, the Fiat G91. Specifically, this is a Fiat G91R, a light attack platform that entered service in 1959. At Pratica di Mare, the G91R flew alongside its modern counterparts, the A200 Tornado IDS and the soon-to-be-retired AMX A11B Ghibli. The effort that went into making this flypast happen cannot be overstated. This is the only flying G91 in the world, and it was restored to flight specifically to take part in this airshow. It took to the air for the first time only 2 days before the show began. In fact, before the 14th of June, when this aircraft made its post-restoration flight, it had been 28 years since a G91 had last flown anywhere in the world. Although this is a G91R, it wears the colours of the Frecce Tricolori. The team used the G91 Pan from 1964 until 1982. The paint scheme was only completed one day before the airshow at Pratica di Mare. And now an equivalent flypast, but this time with 4 generations of fighter: Sabre, Starfighter, Typhoon and F-35. Again, it took extraordinary effort to make this flypast happen. There are currently no flying F-104s in Europe, so the organisers shipped an ex-Italian Air Force TF-104G over from the United States. The F-104G was the most produced variant of the Starfighter. 174 of them were operated by the Italian Air Force, primarily in the interceptor role, from 1964 until 2004. This was the first time a Starfighter had flown in Italian skies since the last example was retired by 311 Gruppo, the Italian Flight Test Centre, in 2005. And there's some nice symmetry to the fact that the last major airshow to be held at Pratica di Mare was the Starfighter farewell event in 2004. Now, this base is not the site of a farewell, but of an emotional return. The F-104 is known as the missile with a man in it. It can't turn very well, but it can certainly go fast. Its General Electric's J91 propels it to Mach 2, and it has a tiny wing with just a 6.6 metre span. I'm told the leading edge of that wing is so sharp that you can actually cut yourself on it. What a treat. An incredible sight and sound. It's one of several starfighters based at Cape Canaveral. They're used for a wide variety of experiments, research, simulations, training operations. But what a treat to see it at a European airshow. One more of these big mixed formations, and this time it's the turn of trainers through the ages. No fewer than 8 of them, in fact. If you look closely, you'll spot one aircraft that isn't a trainer, an MB326K. That's the single-seat camouflaged jet. It's actually a light attack version of the MB326 Advanced Jet Trainer, which was returned to flight in 2019. You can see a standard MB326 Trainer, also in the formation, painted orange. The 326 served from 1962 until 2010. The 326s are joined by a civilian-operated T6 and G46, as well as a quartet of current military trainers, the U-208, T-260B, FT-339C and T-346A. But we come now to the main event as aircraft begin to launch for the air parade. At least one example of almost every type in the flypast operated from Pratica di Mare, but they were joined by others launching from across the region. But what a spectacle this was, representing the full spectrum of the Italian Air Force's capabilities and showcasing very nearly every type in their inventory. In, first of all, an HH-139 trailing the Italian flag. Then, a 22-ship 100 formation comprising 6 F-35A Lightnings, 8 F-2000A Typhoons and 8 T-346A Masters. The helicopters now approach. But as they do, first a quick glance at an MQ-9A Predator B. Italy has 6 of them and they entered service in 2001. Then more HH-139s used for search and rescue and light utility. 30 of them are currently operational, including a mix of HH-139As which entered service in 2012 and 139Bs which entered service in 2020. Its predecessor, a pair of HH-21As, of which Italy has 36. Now a trio of NH-500M Defenders, used as trainer and liaison aircraft. And the HH-101A Caesar, used for combat search and rescue. Italy has 12, and they began to enter service in 2015. On to the fixed-wing trainers, and first up it's the U-208A, dating back to the 1960s. It's followed by a quartet of T-260Bs. Then representatives of the transport fleet, starting with a very distinctive VC-180 Avanti, used in service since 1994 for VIP transport. Tactical transport next, the C-27J Spartan. Italy has 12, with the first entering service in 2006. Also flying past, 2 C-130Js. They entered service in 2000. Italy has 6 standard C-130Js, 3 KC-130J tankers, and 8 stretched C-130J-30s. Now, one of Italy's 2 leased King Air 350 ER Spider signals intelligence aircraft leads one of their 4 P-72A maritime patrol aircraft, a type which entered service in 2016 and which is based on the ATR-72 airliner. More aircraft from the VIP transport fleet now. One of their 3 VC-319As, which entered service in 2004. It's flanked by one of their 4 VC-20A Falcons, which entered service in 1985, and one of their slightly larger VC-900A Falcons, which entered service in 2000. Now, the fast jets. First of all, the FT339C, which entered service in 1979. Then 4 of Italy's 84 Tornadoes, an aircraft due for retirement in 2025, and they're followed by 3 of their 24 A11 Ghiblis, which are due for retirement in 2024. Italy's primary combat aircraft now, the F-2000A Typhoon, which entered service in 2004. Italy has 94 of them and uses the type in the air defence role. Now, the final element. One of Italy's 4 KC-767As leads one of their 2 E-550 airborne early warning and control platforms. They are flanked by 2 Typhoons and a trio of F-35 Lightnings. Lightnings now peel away. One of them is an F-35B. Italy has just 4 of them at the moment from an eventual fleet of 30. F-35As, of which Italy has 17, with an eventual total of 60. Time now to recover those aircraft which operated from Pratica di Mare. A lovely run and brake by the Avantis. Unusually splitting both left and right, with the aircraft making staggered, curved final approaches from both sides of the runway. And not a landing, but a low pass from the 767, which needs to reposition and approach from the opposite direction. That's due to taxiway constraints caused by the parking of aircraft on one of the base's two runways. With the completion of the air parade, time for the 3 permanent solo displays fielded by 311 Gruppo, also known as the Reparto Sperimentale Volo. That's the Italian Air Force Flight Test Centre, which is based here at Pratica di Mare. We start with their very popular C-27J Spartan solo display. The RSV doesn't have specific aircraft assigned to it long term. Aircraft are loaned to it temporarily by regular frontline squadrons so as to spread airframe stress across the entire fleet. But this year, the 3 aircraft being used by the RSV for solo displays have received special markings and will stay with the unit all season. Into a very tight Schneider turn, sustaining around 85 degrees angle of bank. It's no surprise, of course, that the aircraft boasts such excellent manoeuvrability, because it's derived from the G92, which was displayed in similarly dynamic fashion. Now, an aileron roll, demonstrating a roll rate of about 45 degrees per second. And then into a derry turn, a 3/4 roll one way, then a turn in the opposite direction, a manoeuvre developed in aerial combat and popularised at air shows by the test pilot John Derry. Of course, it's a considerably smaller aircraft than the C-130J Hercules that we saw earlier, about 30% shorter and carries about 30% fewer troops. That being said, it's extremely useful in its niche, with better stall performance and better manoeuvrability, as you can see. That performance has won the aircraft orders from around the world, with 16 nations flying the type in military service. Also from the Reparto Sperimentale Volo, time for the T346A Master solo display. The Italian Air Force has 22 Masters, with the type entering service in 2004. They're used primarily as training aircraft, but the Master was also designed to be able to take on many of the duties of the Eurofighter Typhoon, particularly peacetime air policing, all at around 1/10 of the Typhoon's cost per flight hour. Flies with 5 export customers: Greece, Israel, Poland, Qatar and Singapore, but it also has a substantial order backlog with several operators in waiting, namely Azerbaijan, Egypt, Nigeria and Turkmenistan. The Master is also used by the Italian-based International Flight Training School, a multinational military training facility used by pilots from Japan, Qatar, Germany, Singapore, Austria, Canada, the UK and Saudi Arabia. It's a little jet, but it packs a lot of punch, as you can see. A slow pass there into a 360-degree turn. During this turn, the aircraft is not losing energy as many would, but building energy in readiness for a very tall vertical manoeuvre. Exiting that turn with enough energy and enough power at its disposal to pull up into a half vertical 8, 2 stacked half loops, and you don't see a sequence like that very often from a non-afterburning jet trainer. Here's the final RSV display, the F-2000A Typhoon. Italy was arguably the first nation to make significant operational achievements with the Typhoon. They were the first Typhoon operator to use the type for Quick Reaction Alert, the first to receive NATO Quick Response Force certification, and the first to use the Typhoon for NATO air policing. That being said, Italian Typhoons are no longer the most capable Eurofighters in the world. They've been optimised for the air defence role, replacing the F-104 Starfighter, and have very limited air-to-ground capability. The ground attack role will instead be taken on by the F-35. The opinion of the Italian Air Force is that the Typhoon was designed for the air defence role and it cannot perform the ground attack role in a financially viable manner. That's an assessment that other nations disagree with. Tranche 2 and 3 Typhoons used by the UK, Spain and Germany have those capabilities built into them from the ground up.
And now the finale of the show, the largest aerobatic team in Europe, the joint largest jet aerobatic team in the world. It's the inimitable Frecce Tricolori. Starting with a 10-ship formation loop, pretty much the only time we'll see all 10 aircraft together. All 10 jets are wearing special tail schemes this year, 6 designs in total. 4 of them commemorate specific historic squadrons and the other 2 mark 100 years of the Italian Air Force generally. And how wonderful it is to see the Frecce flying a full 10-ship formation because, tragically, Capitano Eliseo Gersi was killed in an ultralight accident a couple of days before the start of the 2023 season. Generally speaking, the format of the display sees 9-ship formation manoeuvres alternating with solo manoeuvres. But what you'll notice is that after most of those 9-ship manoeuvres, the team splits into a 4 and a 5, necessitating some very rapid rejoins before they next run in. Here, for example, is Apollo 313, synchronised rolls and then a separation. The level of technical complexity, especially of the very rapid rejoins, is made possible by the Frecce Tricolori's slow pilot turnover and the fact they barely changed their display routine for decades. That has allowed them to build up a very advanced display, but over the course of many years to absolutely nail it. Negative G turn by Pony 10, and in the background a glimpse of the main formation very quickly joining back up into a single group. And then running in for a barrel roll. Pony 10 this year is Major Massimiliano Salvatore, and he flies probably the most iconic and recognisable solo routine of any major aerobatic team. Cutting across the corner of the spectator area there while running in for probably his most famous manoeuvre, into the vertical, 2 aileron rolls, 2 spins, and then silence. Another pair of rolls on the downline, complete a spectacular Lomshevak, the Frecce being one of only 2 jet aerobatic teams in the world to perform such a manoeuvre, the other being Alphasan of the UAE. And now the main formation arrives for possibly my favourite manoeuvre,
and one which we don't see them fly at many overseas air shows. Rollbacks first of all, and then the team will pull up into a loop. And on the downline, they split for the bomber, with the soloist going up through the middle. But it's not over. The aircraft charge away from us, and then 9 of them pull up into half Cubans to run in back towards show centre for a very impressive cross. And this, as I mentioned, not possible in many other countries because it requires several aircraft to pass over the spectator area, but it is permitted in Italy. I would say, if you've ever seen the Frecce Tricolori outside of Italy, then do still make an effort to see them flying in home skies one day. It is a different experience. Back home, they turn everything up to 11. And the final manoeuvre, drawing the largest Italian flag in the world, which will hang over the spectator area for many minutes to come. Well, what an incredible airshow that was. But we've now come to the end of the Manifestazione Aerea del Centenario dell'Aeronautica Militare. Join me next time for perhaps my favourite airshow in the world, the mad, the extraordinary, the otherworldly Antidotum Airshow Ležno. From Pratica di Mare, thank you for joining us, and from me, Adam Landau, it's goodbye for now.